Hi, everybody. Welcome. I see we have people coming in. We're going to start in just a minute. Okay, let's go ahead and get started so we can start on time. Welcome, everybody. We're so glad that you're here with us today. My name is Nanor. I'm an advisor at EducationUSA Spain, and we're going to do our pre-departure orientation for you all this evening. So just to let you all know, we're going to break it up into 3 sections. We'll have time for question and answer after each section. If you have a question, you can put it in the question and answer box in Zoom, or if you're tuning in from YouTube and watching the live stream, you can put it in the chat in YouTube, and we'll go ahead and try to answer your questions as well. We'll be monitoring the YouTube chat too. Okay, so let's get started. Quickly, our agenda for today. So like I said, we have 3 main sessions. First one will be practical information, what to know before you go. The second one will be student visas, where we're joined by the Vice Consul at the US Embassy in Madrid. He'll go through the visa process with us. And the third will be living and studying on campus, where we'll have a panel of current students as well as recent graduates talking about that. Okay, so with the basics, what to pack. Very important that you do not leave your house without your passport and your visa, as well as your I-20 or DS-2019 document. If it was sent to you electronically, make sure it's printed and you have a physical copy with you. Appropriate clothes. So the United States is a very big country. It can vary a lot from one place to the other. So just make sure that you're packing the appropriate clothes, especially for the first weeks or months that you're there. Later on, you can probably buy more, but just make sure you know the climate or the microclimate for where you're headed to. Then bed sheets and pillowcases. If you're going to be staying, especially in a dorm, for example, they tend to have these longer beds. So knowing the size of the sheets that you need, there are many companies that partner with universities, and they'll help you, order what you need so it's there for you, waiting for you when you're there if you'd like, or you can pack for it. A towel, a plug adapter or converter, right? So for our chargers or other electronic devices, we're going to bring from here, knowing that the plug is different, it's a different system. So making sure you bring an adapter, converter, your favorite product. So some of us have a shampoo or a face wash that we can't live without that may or may not be sold in the US. So until you find an alternative or can buy more, just bring one set of that so you have it with you. And then really important, a copy of your medical record, a copy of your immunization sheet, and any prescriptions or medication that you have, whether it's, like I said, medication or, for example, contact lenses and things like that. Okay, universities should also be giving you a what to bring checklist, or it's on their website for you to find and read. They also tend to have a what not to bring checklist, so make sure you look for that as well. If not, you can always ask student services what it is that they recommend that you bring with you. Very important to put all your important and valuable items in your carry-on bag, so the bag that you have with you the whole time, right? Not the bag that you check in. That includes things like your passport, your I-20 or DS-2019, other documentation that's important, medication, laptop, phone, that kind of stuff we want to have with us. Okay, we are still traveling in times of COVID, so it's our recommendation to please check the CDC website. That's the Center for Disease Control. They have guidelines that they publish and they update, so we want to make sure we check those and understand those before leaving for the US. The website is cdc.gov. And making sure, really important, to check with your university and to understand what their vaccination or testing or quarantine requirements are before you arrive to the US. Really important, okay? Some important people to know. There is someone called the DSO, Designated School Official. They will be a very important person for you and someone that is going to kind of make sure that you are in your status, and someone you should be in contact with if you ever, for example, change majors, or if there's any big changes to your program of study or anything like that. You want to be in touch with them, okay? Academic advisor. You're going to have advisors on campus. Use them. They're going to be there for you to help you with picking classes, for example, or if you want to change majors and you want some advice on that, you can always talk to them. If you're living in dorms on campus, you'll get to know an RA, which is a resident assistant. It's someone who lives on each floor of the dorms and is there to just kind of make sure everything runs smoothly, or if you need help, they're there for you. They're usually upperclassmen. And then tutors, so people who will help you with your homework, class material, understanding the content. It's great to be in touch with them and to use them. Now, some important places to know on campus. So we have International Student Services. This is a fabulous resource for students. They will be there to support you in so many different ways. Once you arrive, you know, if you have questions about banking or about what can you do around campus or housing, how to find housing off campus or whatever it may be, they're there. They also organize a lot of activities and events, so it's a great place to know and be in contact with. The Student Union or the Student Center is a building on campus where students, kind of a hub for students, and you can also get involved with many organizations and activities from there as well. Center for Academic Success, so that can be made up of different parts or centers or things like that. We have Writing Center or Tutoring Center, for example. These are places where you can go and seek help for when it comes to getting papers done, reviewing class material. Maybe you didn't quite understand, you want to review with someone. Really important, use this resource because we do want to make sure we're being academically successful. Career Center. So if you want to practice for an interview, for example, or your resume, or practice interviews and things like that, you can use the Career Center. They're a great resource. And finally, health and wellness. Many campuses have a health and wellness center, and there you can receive kind of basic healthcare services or counseling or things like that. Okay, what school year am I in? So in the US, we don't say I'm in first year or second year or things like that. We normally use freshman year for first, or sophomore or junior or senior. So if you hear those terms, knowing what year it corresponds to. Grades in the US, there's a 4.0 grading scale, and you'll see the letters that correspond with those numbers and kind of their equivalency more or less with the Spanish system. So familiarizing yourself with what is a good grade in the US and what's maybe not so good of a grade. Plagiarism. This is a really important topic. Please do not ever copy academic work from others. It's a really serious offense at US universities. And so if you ever have doubts about what is copying or what is considered plagiarism or how to put something in your own words, visit your university's Writing Center. Again, fabulous resource, making sure also you know how to cite properly. All of that is extremely important. Like I said, it's not worth it. It is a serious problem if you are caught plagiarizing. Okay, office hours. So professors have office hours, so do teaching assistants. They'll let you know when it is. It's usually set for once or twice during the week or whenever it is, where you can go into their office and speak to them about content that was delivered in class or about the professor's research. And it's a really great opportunity to get to know your professor better and to kind of start building a relationship with them. Okay, we encourage you to go and take advantage of that. Okay, a little bit about banking. So before we go, it's a good idea to exchange a little bit of money to US dollars, from euros to US dollars, to have on hand, right? In case somewhere doesn't take a card or whatever it is, just to have a bit that you can use. It's important to also notify your bank here and let them know that you're traveling to the US, whether it's a semester, a year, or more, so they know if they see your card being used, that it's you. And then once you're there, after traveling, once you're at campus, to open a bank account in the US, right? It's gonna be very helpful to have a debit card, for example. And that, again, is something that the International Student Services can guide you better on how to do and give you some advice about that, okay? A word of caution, be careful when opening credit cards. Credit cards, I think, are a little bit more common in the US, and I think maybe they're offered more. So just being cautious about, if you do take out a credit card, knowing that you will have to pay back that money, and understanding well, like, what is it that that you're signing and that you're agreeing to, okay? Housing on campus, there are some options here. There's also options off campus. The on-campus options, you've probably already worked with your school to reserve. We'll also talk about this topic a little bit more in the student panel. And there's also off-campus housing options if you'd like to live off campus, close to campus, but in an apartment or a house or something like that. Okay, for many students, maybe it's the first time that they've ever lived with other people. And so here's some tips we have for you, some things not limited to this, but some tips that we have. So interact with your roommates, do these things. Interact with your roommates, decorate your room or your space, make it your own, and make it somewhere that you're comfortable and happy to study or relax, and be yourself. Right? Be who you are, be comfortable with that. And finally, with your roommates, talk about any norms or, sleeping times, or, when you prefer that lights are off. If you're sharing a room, for example, in the dorms, if you're living in a house, what are some chores or responsibilities that we might want to do, that kind of stuff. It's good to talk about it before. And then don'ts would include things like, don't invite guests without asking your roommates first. Don't leave a mess in the common spaces. So if you do live in a house, for example, don't leave a mess in the living room or in the kitchen and things like that. Do not take or move your roommate's stuff without asking. And finally, do not host a party without asking your roommates first. It's not something that they may want. Okay, insurance. I know this is a topic many people have questions about. So health insurance, let's start with that. It is mandatory in the US. That means you do need to have health insurance. You need to buy health insurance. It's not a public good like it is here necessarily. And so normally what happens is the US university will offer you a health insurance plan or package, right? And that's usually the one that students go with. Sometimes the university even says that that's the one that they require, okay? It's important to see what is included in this health insurance and make sure that that covers all of your needs. And if not, you can look into other insurance as well. Car insurance is also mandatory. So if you're gonna be a US driver, you will need car insurance. Okay, so transport, getting around once you're in the US. This will depend a lot on where your university is actually located. So if you're somewhere in, for example, New York City, you have a fabulous metro system and you really might not need a car at all. If you're somewhere more rural or suburban, you might find that your university, for example, has shuttles that will take you into the city or will take you to certain places regularly. So ask about that. There's also bikes, there's tons of way to kind of get around, buses and everything like that. If you do want to drive in the US, you do need to get a license from what is called the DMV, and you need to get that from your own state, right? So each state in the US is going to issue a driver's license, and you need to get it from the state where you're studying. Okay. To rent a car, generally, you need to be about 25 years or older in general. Sometimes it can be less. And many times, rental car companies will ask for an international driving permit. So along with your actual driver's license from Spain, something that's called an international driving permit that you get here in Spain, okay? So think about that. And then just mentioning that sometimes there are car sharing options around campus that you might want to use. Okay, we want to stay connected with the people we meet on campus, but also people back home that we love and care about. So knowing that Wi-Fi is going to be readily available to you on campus, you can always connect to Wi-Fi, and a cell phone plan. Okay, so if you're going to stay long-term, you're going to go do a degree in the US, it's probably a good idea to get on a cell phone plan for a year or whatever it is. And if you're going for shorter term, less than a year, then looking into something that is more month to month. Again, International Student Services, they're going to be a great place to ask and get recommendations from on this. Okay. Don't be shocked if you see that the people you meet in the US do not necessarily know or use very often WhatsApp or Telegram. It's much more common to use kind of the standard iMessage or SMS, although that is changing. I find more and more they do use those kind of messaging apps, but just a heads up about that. And then finally, we live in a really awesome time where we are like so connected, and there are so many options, right, with things like Skype and FaceTime and Google Hangouts and Zoom and etc. And so there's so many options to stay connected with your friends and family back home in Spain. Just word of advice, don't forget about the time difference. Factor that in when you do make calls or when you plan to be in contact with someone. Okay, a bit about safety. US campuses are quite safe places. There are a ton of services available to students in terms of campus safety. This can include things like escorts, right? Like walking buddies to get you home or to your dorm, rides that they offer, emergency phones that are placed throughout campus, phone numbers you can call if you need anything, paths that are always lit, even through the night, campus security, police, etc., etc. Okay, so make sure you understand what is available to you and use it. Okay, make sure you take advantage of that. Knowing US federal laws. So the drinking age in the US, in case you were not aware, is 21 and over. Okay, so you cannot be drinking in the US until you are 21 legally. Smoking is 18 and over. A DUI, which is driving under the influence, is very serious. So if you're intoxicated in any way, and you're stopped by police, that is a very serious offense. So make sure that it's not something that you do. And possession. So a final word on this is that there are state laws and then there are federal laws. So some states have certain laws. For example, in California, marijuana is legal, right? So some states have certain things that are maybe legal or decriminalized, whereas federally, on the national level, it's not. And so you need to follow the federal laws when it comes to these kinds of things. So it's really important to know what the federal laws are and to follow those, because you do not want to jeopardize your student visa. Okay. So cultural shock is something that is going to happen. It's part of the experience. I hope that you enjoy it as much as possible, because it's going to happen, but it's something we all go through. It starts off great, and then you're shocked, and then you start adjusting, and then maybe you feel alone. But in the end, you do finally adjust, and you do finally kind of integrate into the culture of where you are. So a few examples of what this might look like. Tipping, let's start with that. So if you go out to eat, for example, at a restaurant, the price that you see on the menu will not necessarily be the price that you end up paying, because in the US we tip, okay, we leave propina. So, and that's usually 15% or more. So for example, if you eat a meal for $20, you should be leaving 3 plus maybe 4 tip, okay? Sales tax, another thing of you might not pay what you actually see on the label. So many states have sales tax. That amount can differ, and it can also it can differ on what type of item, but just know that many times there is a sales tax. So if you go to the register to buy something and it's a bit more than what it says on the price tag, that's why. The next two, I think, have been influenced a little bit by COVID. So the bubble and how we greet people. But pre-COVID and after COVID, when we go back to being, back to how things were in the US, we tend to have more of a bubble, a personal space, I would say. And when you meet someone new for the first time, it's really either wave hi or shaking their hand, right? So we don't give kisses. Holidays. Obviously, there are different holidays in different countries based on their culture and their history and things like that. You'll find out what are the important holidays in the US, and for example, July 4th or Thanksgiving or whatever it may be. So enjoy those holidays. I'm sure you will be making friends who will invite you to tons of celebrations, or like I said, the International Student Services Office usually organizes things as well. Sports in the US, the major sports would be American football, basketball, baseball, soccer, not so much. So just being aware of kind of what are the more popular sports. Americans might think something is near when you might think it's far. You'll find out more about that when you arrive. This next one, dining schedule, I think is maybe the most kind of hard to adjust to, maybe. So in case you weren't aware, in the US in the morning, 7 or 8 a.m., they tend to have a full breakfast, eggs, potatoes, toast, bacon, whatever it is. And then at 1 or 2, having a lunch, and then dinner around 6 or 7, maybe 8. But being aware of these times and kind of the type of food that's eaten during those meals, just so you know what's open and what's available to you, things like that, and when the dining halls will be available and when they'll be open or closed, that's important. It might be hard to adjust at first, but you will do it eventually, and it's just part of the fun. And then finally, university pride and student life. So students are really proud of being, students at that university. You'll see that, for example, through all of the clothes that they wear with the university logo and colors, and there's just a lot of school spirit when you're on campus, and you'll feel that. And student life, right? It's a lot more involved than just going to class. There's going to be a lot of activities, a lot of organizations and clubs and sports games, and so many things that you're going to want to get involved in. Okay, so my final tips would be, don't forget to attend your own school's orientation. So once you get there, they will do orientations. Usually they have one for international students specifically and one for all students. So attending those is a great idea. You're going to get a ton of information more specific to your school and meet a lot of great people before classes start. Don't forget to take advantage of all the resources offered. Okay, so US campuses have a ton of resources. We saw some of them, right? The International Student Services or Career Center or the Writing Center. So use those, they're there for you. Okay, so don't be shy, really make the most of those. And then my final one would be work-play balance. So you guys are all embarking on this new journey, which is fabulous, and it's going to be so much fun, and it's going to be, you're going to have so many great experiences. But also don't forget that you're there as a student, so you want to make sure that academically you're still very successful and doing good in school. So kind of balancing those two things, having a good experience. Okay. Final reminder, there's always someone there to help. Okay, you're not alone. You have a ton of people who it's their job to help you and support you. So reach out to them if you need it. Finally, once you're there, if you post photos on social media of you on campus, of you participating in campus activities, please do feel free to tag us. We'd love to connect with you and see how you're doing. Okay, so we have time for a couple questions. So I'm going to go ahead and see what type of questions we have in the chat, and I'll answer a few and we'll go from there. Okay. Is there any health insurance you would recommend? I can't recommend any health insurance companies. The most important thing, like I said, is to speak to your university and see what they offer you as a student. Most students go with the package that their university offers. The only thing is I would recommend to get health insurance, if not with the university, with a company in the US, because it can get a little tricky having your insurance here try to cover things in the US, okay? So you can always ask the university too, if they have any recommendations apart from theirs. Ok, en caso de que vaya a comprar un coche, ¿vas a contener el carnet de coche en de España o es necesario realizar algún trámite? Como he dicho, tenemos que realizar el trámite de tener un carnet de Estados Unidos, ¿vale? Para conducir ahí, okay? So if we're going to be there long term, we need to have a US driver's license del estado donde está nuestra universidad, okay? Como he dicho, International Student Services os puedo ayudar con esto y daros muchos detalles de cómo hacerlo, okay? Y voy a responder a alguna más. Los estudiantes pueden solicitar la devolución de IVA de sus compras. No estoy segura, creo que no, porque no es solo para un viaje, sino están viviendo ahí como alumnos. Pero no estoy 100% segura. Okay, there are some more questions coming in. I'm going to take one more and then we're going to go on to the next section. Okay, and then at the very end, I can stay and answer more questions. Okay, if my Spanish private insurance covers health in the US, do I have to take insurance my university offers? So like I said, some universities will require you to take their insurance or have insurance from the US. And we generally recommend that you do go with a US company, even if your Spanish insurance covers, because you need to find out really well what they actually cover and how much. So that's my recommendation to you, is talk to your university more about that. Ok, vamos a seguir con la la siguiente parte. So student visas. Okay, let's talk about student visas. For that, we are joined by Alexis Nieves, who is the Vice Consul at the U.S. Embassy in Madrid. A little bit about Alexis. So he started his career as, his first assignment was in Port-au-Prince in Haiti, and he previously worked short stints in the Office of Cuban Affairs Bureau of Western Hemisphere at the U.S. State Department, and at the U.S. mission to the UN in Geneva in the Office of Humanitarian Affairs. Prior to joining the State Department, Alexis served in various leadership roles in New York with state government agencies, political campaigns, and nonprofit organizations. And Alexis holds a master's degree from the Fletcher School of Tufts University. So thank you so much, Alexis, for being here with us. I know we're all anxious to hear more about the student visa process. So the floor is now yours.
All right, thank you very much. That presentation definitely brought me back to my college days, and so it was interesting. Yo voy a dar la presentación en español sobre el proceso para aplicar para un visado y lo que tienen que hacer antes de venir a la embajada, porque es muy importante que tengan todos los documentos adecuados y que sepan el proceso. Entonces voy a comenzar aquí por enseñando mi pantalla para que vean la presentación que hice para ustedes, ¿ok? Entonces hoy voy a presentar sobre los visados de estudiante y visitante de intercambio. El proceso, bueno, se comienza con usted, ¿no? Con el estudiante. Después tiene la solicitud, la admisión en la universidad en Estados Unidos. La universidad le va a enviar el I-20 para los estudiantes que vienen a la embajada para solicitar visado F, o el DS-2019 si eres un estudiante que vienes a solicitar a la embajada un visado J, ¿vale? Cuando vienes a la embajada te hacemos la entrevista y después te avisamos si te hemos aprobado, denegado el visado. Pero esto es un poco más del proceso y voy a entrar un poco más en detalle. El primer paso, antes que nada, es comunicarse con la universidad. Tiene que comunicarse con la universidad para que le envíe o el formulario DS-2019 para los J1s o el I-20 para los F1s. Es muy importante que se comunique con su universidad y si su universidad no le ha enviado este formulario y va a comenzar sus clases pronto, debe de comunicarse con su universidad lo más pronto posible. Nosotros en la embajada no somos responsables por darles este formulario. Ya ustedes tienen que venir a la embajada con este formulario. Así que, de nuevo, sin este formulario no le podemos en realidad otorgar el visado. Entonces tienen que su universidad va a decidir cuál formulario le corresponde, o va a ser el DS-2019 o el I-20. Ya con uno de los dos formularios nosotros sabemos qué tipo de visado viene a solicitar, ¿vale? Ya cuando la universidad le ha enviado el formulario, el segundo paso es entrar a la página, al sitio de web fmjfee.com y pagar la tasa de SEVIS, lo que se llama en inglés Student and Exchange Visitor Information System, que es una de las tasas que tienes que pagar antes de venir a la embajada, y tienes que imprimir el recibo como prueba de que has pagado la tasa de SEVIS para el día de la entrevista. Te vamos a pedir que nos demuestre el recibo con la tasa de SEVIS, porque es para nosotros comprueba que sí vas a ser estudiante en Estados Unidos y que la universidad ha confirmado tu presencia como estudiante en la universidad, ¿vale? Entonces, por favor de entrar a ese sitio de web en el paso número 2 y pagar la tasa de SEVIS. Después de que pagues la tasa de SEVIS, puedes comenzar con el paso número 3, que es entrar al sitio de web que está en el paso 3 para rellenar el formulario DS-160. Y el formulario DS-160 es básicamente un formulario de varias preguntas que te hacemos para conocerte un poco más, para saber a qué países has viajado y otras preguntas también que te hacemos. Es muy importante contestar todas estas preguntas de manera clara y correcta, porque el día que vengas a la entrevista miramos este formulario en nuestro sistema y en realidad que es muy importante llenarlo con paciencia y de manera correcta, porque para nosotros es un formulario que miramos de una manera muy detallada, ¿vale? Después de que después de que pases por el paso número 3 y has llenado el formulario de DS-160, puedes entrar a solicitar un visado al sitio de web que está en el paso número 4. Sé que muchas personas ahora estudiantes se encuentran en una situación en donde tienen su cita para septiembre, octubre o hasta noviembre, pero van a comenzar sus programas en agosto y tienen que viajar pronto. Nosotros estamos abriendo más citas para los estudiantes, así que pueden entrar a la página de web esta para ver en el paso número 4, para ver las citas que sean abiertos. Y si ven una cita abierta, simplemente pueden entrar y solicitar entrevista, ¿vale? Nuestra prioridad este verano son los estudiantes, estamos entrevistando muchos estudiantes. Nuestra meta es que todos los estudiantes que comiencen sus programas en septiembre, que vengan a la embajada este verano para que comiencen sus programas a tiempo. Les pedimos, claro, paciencia también porque nosotros estamos todavía operando con recursos muy limitados en la embajada y también nuestra prioridad es la salud de todos, ¿no? Entonces también tenemos una capacidad muy limitada en la embajada de las personas que podemos recibir todos los días debido a la pandemia, debido al COVID-19. Pero como dije, estamos entrevistando a los estudiantes. Si tienes una entrevista para septiembre o para octubre y tienes que viajar en agosto y tu programa comienza pronto, por favor de entrar a este sitio de web para ver las citas que están disponibles y puedes solicitar entrevista tú mismo. O sea, puedes cambiar la cita que tenéis a otra cita diferente, que sea más temprano, ¿vale? Y bueno, ya después de que pagues la tasa para solicitar puedes solicitar entrevista después de que pagues las 2 tasas, ¿vale? El paso número 5, el día de la entrevista, ¿cuáles son los documentos que tienes que traer contigo? Primero que nada, el formulario original DS-2019 o el I-20. Esos formularios son muy importantes. Sin esos formularios no podemos aprobar el visado, ¿ok? Entonces, es muy importante que traiga ese formulario con usted el día de la entrevista para que le podamos aprobar el visado. Además del DS-2019, I-20 también necesita el DS-160, que es la hoja de confirmación. Necesita un pasaporte, claro, válido, que el pasaporte sea válido, y una foto. Y de nuevo puse ahí el sitio de web a donde pueden ir para más información sobre documentación adicional. Varias personas preguntan si necesitan traer prueba de vacunación o de una prueba negativa de PCR a la embajada. Para el día de la entrevista no necesitan traer ni prueba de vacunación o una prueba negativa PCR. No le pedimos ningún documento médico el día de la entrevista, no es requisito para la entrevista. Lo que sí piden las aerolíneas el día que vaya a viajar a Estados Unidos como estudiante es que tenga prueba que ha salido negativo del COVID-19 3 días antes del vuelo. Eso sí es importante y el gobierno americano también está pidiendo que todos que van a viajar a Estados Unidos que tengan un PCR que demuestre que ha salido negativo 3 días antes del vuelo, ¿vale? Y bueno, al final de la entrevista, nosotros como oficiales consulares vamos a comunicarles si el visado ha sido aprobado o denegado. Nosotros estamos aquí para facilitarles el viaje a Estados Unidos y somos personas muy amables, queremos facilitar el viaje, queremos que ustedes tengan una experiencia cultural y que estudien en Estados Unidos, pero sin estos documentos no podemos seguir con el proceso. Así que yo sé que sigo diciéndolo, pero es muy, muy importante que traigan todos estos documentos el día de la entrevista. De nuevo, o el formulario DS-29 o el I-20, el formulario DS-160, pasaporte válido, una foto válida y la tasa de Syllabus, el recibo como prueba que pagó la tasa de Syllabus para el día de su entrevista. Una foto muy rápida aquí. Les ha puesto para que vean cómo se ven los formularios. Aquí tienes el formulario I-20 y el formulario DS-2019. Los formularios tienen varias cosas en común, pero son 2 formularios distintos, 2 formularios diferentes. Así que, y estos formularios las universidades a donde van, van a enviarles uno de los dos formularios, ¿vale? Ahora, cuando entren a solicitar el visado, van a ver varias páginas de web, ¿no? Y más que nada he puesto este slide aquí para que vean cómo se ven las páginas, ¿ok? Entonces, cuando entren a pagar la tasa de Syllabus, así se va a mirar la página de web. Cuando entren a pagar, cuando entren a rellenar el formulario DS160, así se mira el sitio de web, y ya cuando termine de pagar la tasa de Syllabus y cuando termine de rellenar el formulario DS160, ya puede solicitar su cita. De nuevo, para aquellos que se encuentran en una situación en donde tengan la entrevista en octubre o noviembre y la necesitan pronto, por favor de entrar a esta página, a la última, para pedir una nueva cita, ¿vale? Y de nuevo, ya revisé esto, pero la documentación que necesitan, el DS160 o el I-20, DS2019, pasaporte válido, el pago de Syllabus y una foto que sea 2x2, y que sea una foto, por favor, de usted nada más, que no sea una foto con la prima o con su madre o con un tío, no, tiene que ser una foto de usted solo con un fondo blanco, ¿ok? Aquí puse yo una foto más o menos un poquito chistosa para que vean, pero muy importante que sea una foto clara, porque sin la foto adecuada tampoco no podemos avanzar con el proceso, ¿ok? Entonces la foto también cuenta como parte integral del proceso para pedir un visado. El día de la entrevista. El día de la entrevista van a venir a la embajada con todos los documentos y le vamos a hacer la entrevista en inglés. Es parte del proceso. Es muy importante que nos hablen o intenten de hablar con nosotros en inglés. Queremos ver cuál nivel de inglés tienen. Le vamos a hacer varias preguntas. Queremos saber un poco más del programa, sus planes después del programa. Y de nuevo, ¿no? Nosotros estamos aquí para facilitarles el viaje a Estados Unidos, pero también necesitamos de nuestra parte asegurarnos que sí hablan inglés y que sí tienen un nivel de inglés bastante fuerte y suficiente para terminar un curso, para terminar la universidad y su tiempo en Estados Unidos en la universidad, ¿vale? No le estamos pidiendo que hablen fluente o que si hablan fluente bien, pero tampoco estamos pidiendo que nos hablen de teorías complicadas o nada de eso, ¿vale? Son preguntas bien básicas. Y quería hablar un poco también de lo que ya he comentado, el examen PCR. Todos ustedes necesitan un examen PCR 3 días antes de viajar a Estados Unidos. Muy importante porque puede ser que se los pida la aerolínea y también cuando lleguen a inmigración, ¿vale? Visita familiar y de amigos. Yo sé que hay muchos padres que quieren ir con sus hijos para dejarlos en las universidades, para ver cómo están, para organizarles tal vez el cuarto, lo que sea. Infelizmente, los viajes de familia y amigos no se permiten en el momento debido a las proclamaciones presidenciales y no sabemos cuándo las proclamaciones presidenciales van a cambiar. No, tampoco voy a dar un estimado porque en realidad esa decisión viene de la Casa Blanca y del presidente de Estados Unidos. Cualquier cambio que haya de restricciones a viajes de España a Estados Unidos va a venir directamente de la Casa Blanca. Así que lamento darles esa noticia porque sé que hay muchos familiares y amigos que quieren viajar a Estados Unidos con sus familiares y con las personas que van a estudiar a Estados Unidos, pero infelizmente esos viajes no se permiten. Ahora, en inglés lo que tenemos, lo que se llama el National Interest Exception, la excepción de interés nacional, NIE o NIE en español. Si eres estudiante y vas a Estados Unidos, necesitas un NIE. Si eres estudiante, cualificas para el NIE porque vas a estudiar en Estados Unidos. Entonces, el día que vengas a la embajada, te vamos a preguntar cuándo planificas viajar a Estados Unidos, porque el NIE es un permiso electrónico que le damos a los estudiantes, que es un permiso que es válido por un periodo de 30 días y solo es válido por una entrada, que lo que quiere decir es que nosotros como oficiales consulares le damos permiso para que entren a Estados Unidos por un periodo de 30 días y de nuevo, ese permiso solo es válido por una entrada, ¿vale? Entonces, cuando lleguen a la embajada, le vamos a preguntar a qué días planifican viajar. La mayoría de ustedes van a viajar en agosto o en septiembre y nosotros les vamos a dar una fecha particular para que puedan entrar a tiempo a Estados Unidos para comenzar sus programas, ¿vale? Y ya hemos hablado un poco de la salud y seguridad y limitaciones. Debido a la pandemia, infelizmente hay muchas limitaciones, pero nuestra prioridad en la embajada es la salud de todo el mundo. ¿Ok? Aquí les ha puesto yo enlaces para que entren, para que los escriban y para que sepan dónde es que tienen que ir. Por ejemplo, para pagar la tasa de SEBES, para llenar el formulario de S160, para solicitar entrevista y para información general sobre la situación actual y cómo va desarrollando y cambiando las proclamaciones presidenciales y las reglas, ¿vale? Estamos viviendo en un momento muy único, estamos todos pasando por una pandemia. Yo creo que la situación va mejorando muy bien, tal cual como en España, como en Estados Unidos. Y ojalá que la situación mejore para que todo cambie, para que todo regrese a la normalidad. Es tal cuando las reglas cambien, cuando nosotros recibimos nuevas información, siempre ponemos esa nueva información en nuestra página de web. Así que les recomiendo que entren a nuestra página de web para que estén al día de las restricciones y de las proclamaciones presidenciales y de toda la información que necesitan saber antes de viajar, ¿vale? Así que eso concluye mi presentación y ahora también quiero dejar tiempo para que me pregunten, para que me hagan preguntas. Y pues nada, darles las gracias también por la oportunidad de tenerme hoy para hablar con ustedes.
Thank you, Alexis. That was great. I think that covered a lot of really important information for all our students. I'm going through the question and answer box. So I'm going to give you a couple of questions that I see kind of popping up. The first one is, if I have the F1 visa that's valid until 2024, and my university has issued me a new I-20, I suppose because they're doing a different program than they did when they first got the F1 visa, do I need to go to the US Embassy for a new visa?
So in that case, I would recommend that they email, they contact us. So we on our website, there's a contact us form. So they can just on the website and write their specific question, and we can answer them because every situation is different. And so, you know, some programs might require for the student to actually come in to apply for a new visa, but we need to see the actual I-20 and get a better understanding if the student is continuing in the same university, if he's going to a different university, if he has a different major. So there are just a whole bunch of different factors that we need to assess before, you know, we're able to answer that question. Traditionally speaking, if the student is applying for a new program at a different university, then they would have to come into the US Embassy to apply for a new visa because they're starting a new program at a different school. But
Great. Thank you.
Have that student contact us through our website and we'll address the question.
Perfect. So yeah, maybe that's a good moment to repeat. If anyone has particular questions about your specific situation, the best thing to do is to use that contact form and contact the embassy. Okay. So we have a ton of this question, which you addressed, but I guess it'd be great if you addressed it once more, because I think it's something that's causing some anxiety amongst our students. Yeah. They're finding that they're only getting appointments available. The first available appointment is in November, for example, but I start in August. So what do you recommend that I do? What do I do?
Yeah, so we're currently in the process of opening up more appointments for students. So just continue to go on the site that I provided in my presentation for, you know, just enter into the site and see if there are any additional appointments, because we are opening more appointments for students. And so they will be able to schedule, they pretty much will be able to reschedule themselves. So if their appointments, for example, are in October or November, and they start their programs in August, upon entering the site to schedule their appointments, they're going to be able to reschedule themselves, because again, we're trying to open up more appointments for them. So my biggest piece of advice is for them to just continue to check in on the site for available appointments, and once they find an available appointment that meets their time frame, to have them reschedule themselves.
Great. And a couple people have been asking, like, they've asked for an expedited appointment after having got an appointment for a later date, and they haven't heard back. So is there like a time frame more or less that they should expect to hear back by, or what do you recommend in that situation? Just hold tight and they'll get heard from?
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to respond to all the requests we get, right? We're inundated, obviously, you know, with the amount of requests we get. So we do ask for everyone's patience. At the same time, again, if you are traveling soon, our biggest recommendation right now is just to go on the website for scheduling your appointment and just to reschedule yourself, because we are going to be opening up additional appointments for these students who find themselves in that particular situation.
There's a lot of questions here about, is this type of test valid? How long is it valid for? You know, before I arrive, this and that. And the answer would be to check CDC guidelines, right? They're going to be the ones that will.
Correct. Yeah. So check in with the CDC's website, right? They have more guidance on, you know, health protocols and things you need to do before traveling. As the U.S. government, we're highly recommending for people to come in with a PCR test 3 days before their trip to the U.S. Not traveling with a PCR test could put the applicant's travel at risk and in jeopardy, right? They might not be able to board their flight. They might not be able to enter the U.S. So the U.S. government, you know, is saying that every traveler going to the U.S. Needs to present a PCR test 72 hours, which is 3 days, right, before their flight.
And if they're already vaccinated? Do we know?
Yeah, so even if, and I guess I'll say this in Spanish too, but even if you're vaccinated, you need to have a PCR test, right? So, si estás vacunado o si no estás vacunado, necesitas como quiera presentar un examen, el examen PCR negativo. Tienes que hacerte el examen PCR 3 días antes, estés vacunado o no estés vacunado. Okay?
And does their visa allow them to leave the United States, like travel outside the US to Canada or Mexico or wherever it may be, or come back to Spain for Christmas, for example? Is that fine to do?
Yeah, so the visa is multiple entry, right? So students can come and go at least to and from the U.S. as they please, right? There are a couple of important things, though, that I do want to share that is extremely important for students to remember. If you are a student going to the U.S. and you want to travel to Canada, or you want to travel to Mexico, or wherever it may be outside of the U.S., my first recommendation and our recommendation is to check in with what travel restrictions are in place for people coming from that country to the United States, right? Every country, every specific region of the world has very particular travel restrictions. And so everyone should be doing their homework on what kind of travel restrictions exist in the countries that they're planning to visit, okay? The second recommendation and the second thing that you know, we're reminding students is that if you are traveling outside of the US, you need to make sure that you bring with you either your DS 2019 or your I-20, because that's going to be that's going to be an extremely important document that you need to bring, because when you come back to the US, our immigration officials are going to ask you what the purpose of your visit is. And unless you have either one of those two forms that shows that you're a student, you put your chances of coming back at risk, right? So if you're leaving the US, just make sure you bring with you your DS 2019 or your I-20, depending if you're an F or a J, right? And I'll say this in Spanish. So si vas a viajar afuera de Estados Unidos, si quieres ir a Canadá o a México, por ejemplo, si quieres viajar afuera de Estados Unidos, nuestra recomendación es que mires muy bien las restricciones que existen para los viajeros que están queriendo viajar de ese país a Estados Unidos. Y la segunda es que traigas contigo tu formulario I-20 o el DS 2019, porque ese documento vas a tener que presentarlo cuando regreses a Estados Unidos, que es un documento muy importante que necesitas tener contigo cuando viajas afuera de Estados Unidos, o si vienes de vacaciones a visitar a tu familia en España, o si vas de vacaciones a México un fin de semana con tus amigos en la universidad, lo que sea. Por favor, de traer contigo el formulario, el I-20 o el DS 2019, ¿vale?
Also to talk to your DSO. So remember at the beginning I said your designated school official. That person is going to be really important when it comes to maintaining status, and they're going to need to know about trips that you take or those kinds of things. So let them know that, hey, I'm going back to Spain for Christmas, or I'm taking a trip to Canada. So I see a lot of questions of what do I do when I want to come to Spain, or what do I do if I want to take a trip? Talk to your DSO. Okay, that's something you handle once you're in the US. And like Alexa said, make sure you always have your I-20 or DS 2019 on you.
Y nosotros estamos recomendando, nuestra recomendación es que si no tienen que viajar, si no tienen que salir de Estados Unidos, por favor de no salir, porque no le podemos garantizar al salir, y si las proclamaciones presidenciales todavía siguen vigentes, no podemos garantizarles que le vamos a poder dar un NIE, la excepción de interés nacional, a tiempo para que regresen a Estados Unidos. Entonces, por ejemplo, si vienes a España a visitar familia o de vacaciones, vas a necesitar en el momento, por ahora, necesitas la excepción, ¿no? Que es, los recuerdo, la excepción es solo válido por un periodo de 30 días y por una entrada nada más. Entonces, si vienen de regreso a España para la Navidad o lo que sea, por favor de tener en cuenta, ¿no? Que para procesar la excepción demora un poco. Entonces, no podemos garantizarles que si salen de Estados Unidos que van a poder regresar a tiempo para empezar y comenzar sus programas. Entonces, si no necesitan viajar afuera de Estados Unidos, si no es urgente, por favor de no viajar. ¿Okay?
Okay, I'm seeing many questions around different topics, so I'll start with the national interest exception. Can you explain what that is? How does a student know if they need one? And if they do, what do they do? How do they get it?
Yeah, so it's pretty straightforward. Los estudiantes que vienen están exentos de la excepción, ¿ok? Entonces, hay una categoría particular de estudiantes que son exentos y otra categoría de estudiantes que necesita el NIE, la excepción. El día que vengas a la embajada, nosotros vamos a avisarte si necesitas o si no necesitas la excepción. Y si necesitas la excepción y cualificas para el visado, nosotros te aprobamos el NIE el mismo día. De nuevo, el NIE es un permiso electrónico, no es un papel que te damos, no es un formulario, es un permiso electrónico que nuestros agentes de aduana van a poder ver cuando estés pasando por inmigración en Estados Unidos, ¿vale? Y el NIE, si quieres preguntar sobre el estatus o si quieres solicitar el NIE, puedes enviarnos un correo electrónico. Esto es si eres un estudiante con visado J. Los estudiantes con visado F no necesitan el NIE, no necesitan la excepción porque son exentos, pero hay muchos de ustedes que son Jotas, que van a Estados Unidos con visados Jotas, y para aquellos estudiantes que van a Estados Unidos con visados Jotas, sí, esos estudiantes necesitan el NIE. ¿Ok? Nosotros en la embajada le estamos dando a todos los estudiantes una página, una hoja, con toda la información que necesitan saber antes de viajar a Estados Unidos, incluyendo los días que puede viajar, el periodo de 30 días que se le permite viajar a Estados Unidos, ¿vale? Entonces, le voy a dar un poco más de un ejemplo personal. Si van a Estados Unidos, por ejemplo, en agosto, vas a venir a la embajada para el visado, vamos a decirte, ok, te estamos dando permiso de entrar a Estados Unidos entre el 1 de agosto y el 30 de agosto. Vamos a decir, llegas a Estados Unidos el 13 de agosto, está bien porque cae entre esas fechas, ¿vale? Ahora, si quieres regresar a España en diciembre o en enero para ver a tu familia, tienes que enviarnos de nuevo en el momento. Puede ser que las restricciones cambien, puede ser que esto cambie, ¿no? Pero en el momento, si viajas en el futuro, si viajas después de, vamos a decir, del 31 de agosto, o si viajas después de los 30 días, tienes que enviarnos un correo electrónico para que te demos otro NIE, que va a ser otro permiso electrónico que va a ser válido por un periodo de 30 días, ¿vale? Y ese permiso, siempre y cuando viajes de regreso a España, para regresar a Estados Unidos vas a necesitar ese permiso. Y para pedir la solicitud para ese permiso tienes que enviarnos un correo electrónico a la dirección madridnie@state.gov. Y Nonor, if you can do me the favor of putting that in the chat, that would be great. Okay? Y bueno, y eso es todo. Ya cuando vengan el día de la entrevista, le explicamos un poco más las fechas que se le ha otorgado permiso para entrar a Estados Unidos y lo que hacer si necesita viajar de nuevo. Lo explicamos de manera muy detallada en el formulario que le damos, ¿vale?
I'm on mute. Okay, more common questions I'm seeing is, how long does it take? So once I do the interview, how do I get the visa and how long does it take to receive it, more or less?
Yeah, so if the students come in with the right documents, if they have all the proper paperwork, it takes between 4 to 6 business days, okay? Entonces, si vienen con los documentos correctos y si todo se ve bien con su aplicación y si traen los documentos de los cuales hablé yo en la presentación, usualmente coge entre 4 y 6 días laborales para que el visado les llegue a sus casas.
And then, can you explain a little bit about when do we get the visa? So I see like how much in advance can I get it? How long after it expires can I stay in the US? Those types of questions.
Yeah, so si vas con visado J o F, solo puedes viajar a Estados Unidos 30 días antes del programa. No puedes viajar 30 días. O sea, tienes que viajar 30 días antes del programa. O sea, no puedes viajar 60 días, 90 días antes de que comiences el programa porque no te van a dejar entrar a Estados Unidos. So if you're traveling as a J or F, you can only enter the US 30 days before the start date of your program. And if you're an F, you can only stay 60 days after the end date of your program. And if you're going as a J, you can only stay 30 days after the end date of your program. Sí, entonces, si estás viajando con un visado J, solo te puedes quedar en Estados Unidos 30 días después de que termine tu programa, ¿ok? Y si estás con visado F, te puedes quedar hasta 70 días después de que termine el programa, ¿ok? So,
and the maximum time that they can get the visa before the program starts was 6 months?
Yeah, entonces para viajar 120 días antes de que comience el programa. Tienes que venir a la embajada. No le podemos otorgar visado a nadie si viene más de 120 días antes de que comience el programa. Tiene que ser entre 120 días para que le podamos imprimir el visado. Okay? So 6 months, more or less.
Great. Is it necessary to show bank statements or financial documents? Necesitamos mostrar extractos de nuestra cuenta bancaria.
Depende de la entrevista. Usualmente es buena idea de traer prueba de cuentas bancarias, pero no es necesariamente un requisito. Si quieres traer las cuentas de banco o otro documento financiero para soportar tu aplicación, puedes traerlo si quieres, pero para que nosotros veamos más que nada cómo vas a pagar la educación, ¿no? Pero no es un requisito, no es necesario traer esa documentación. Pero si quieres de nuevo soportar tu aplicación con esos documentos, puedes traer esos documentos si quieres.
And a few questions about buying tickets. So plane tickets, should I buy it before? And also on the other hand, if I've already bought it, will it affect my visa, getting my visa?
No, so the students should not buy their plane tickets before actually having the physical visa in their hands. Los estudiantes no deben de comprar el billete de avión antes de tener el visado y no es requisito traer el billete de avión para la entrevista. So it's not a requirement to have the plane ticket for the day of your interview. We don't ask for medical documents. We don't ask for your plane tickets. In fact, we recommend that you book your plane ticket once you have the visa.
Great. Okay. Couple more if you don't mind, but we're almost there. We've gone through a ton. Thank you for your patience with all these questions. Is it possible to pick up the passport and the visa at the embassy instead of have it sent to me?
No, so we send all the passports to people's personal addresses that they provide us with in their application. Entonces, no es posible. Todo el mundo recibe el pasaporte con el visado en sus casas a través de correos.
Okay. And the last question, I guess, is if a student is going to go to study in the US to do an English course and increase, better their level of English, is the interview still in English?
So in that case, we try to ask a couple of questions in English, but we do understand that the student is going to the US to learn English, but we still have to do the interview in English just to assess the student's level of English. There's a chance that we might ask a few questions in Spanish, but for student visas, generally speaking, we do the interviews in English. Entonces, de manera muy general, si vas a aprender inglés en Estados Unidos, nosotros sabemos que tal vez tu nivel de inglés no sea tan alto, pero está bien. Como quiera, te vamos a hacer la entrevista en inglés, te vamos a preguntar preguntas muy sencillas te la vamos a preguntar de manera muy lenta y vamos a ver a dónde estás con tu nivel de inglés. Y también si vas a estudiar inglés en Estados Unidos, tal vez te preguntemos algunas preguntas en español también. Entonces, no te tienes que preocupar por eso. Nosotros, los oficiales consulares en la embajada, todos hablamos español.
Okay, there's a couple more questions that are specific, so I'll repeat. Please use the contact form on the U.S. Embassy website. We'll write that to you now in a minute as well. And then there's a last question, which I guess I think I know the answer to, but if you could just address it, because I think it'll help, is I think people, again, are nervous about getting a visa on time. Is there a guarantee that they can start their program on time, or what should they expect in terms of being able to make it at the start of their program date at this point?
Yeah, so again, we're asking for everyone's patience, right? Our number one priority is keeping people healthy and safe, and we do have a waiting room capacity, so we can bring in more than a couple of people at a time into our waiting room, mostly because of COVID, right? So first of all, just bear with us. We ask for your patience, and we thank you for your patience. We're trying to fit in as many students as we can. Continue to check in on the website for scheduling a visa. We're constantly adding new appointments into our scheduling system. So if you do have an appointment for September or October and you need to start your program soon, then go on to that website and go on to it every single day, because every single day, we're going about adding appointments, and we're going to try our very best to accommodate all the students. There's always a few that might get left behind because of our limited restrictions and capacity and limited resources, but we really are trying to do our best to meet everyone's demand. And at the same time, if for whatever reason, you find yourself in the situation that you haven't made it in time for your program, but your interview at the embassy is coming up soon, we ask you to get in contact with your university and let them know the situation. Maybe you can do the first, couple of days, online until you're able to come to the embassy. But our priority this summer is students, and we're trying to, get all the students into the embassy. And so, again, just continue to go on to to that website, and Nanor, just make sure you put the website, for
Yep. As soon as we're done with this right now, I'm going to put all the links again.
Yeah,
so everyone,
great.
Please look in there for the contact form and the link to the website and,
just
and
go
all
on
that
there,
stuff.
Go on there every single day, and hopefully you'll see a visa appointment that fits with the student's time frame. So.
Thanks so much. Okay, we're going to stop here. Again, if you have more specific questions to your case, contact the contact form. We're putting in the chat box now some of the important links, so check those. There's a ton of information on the U.S. Embassy website as well. We encourage you read it. There's a lot of info there that will answer your questions as well. Thanks a million, Alexis, for being with us. It was fabulous to have you. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. Best of luck. Good luck to all the students going to the U.S. I'm jealous.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Okay, everyone, thank you. We're going to move on to the next part of our session, of our pre-departure orientation, which is living and studying on campus with a student panel. I'm going to welcome the panelists. Let me make sure they can all turn on their cameras and their mics. I'm going to ensure that they can do that now. Sorry, ladies, I'm working on it. Okay, I think I've gotten everyone now. Okay, cool. So welcome. Thank you guys for being here with us. And I'm gonna hand it over to Jenna to take over.
Excellent, thank you. So hi, everybody. I'm happy to be here. My name is Jenna. I am working with EducationUSA as an intern, and I am here with Isabel, Rachel, and Sarah, who are all able to turn on their cameras. Awesome. And we are going to talk a little bit about experiences as students on US campuses in the United States. So some of these topics Nanor touched on in the beginning part of the presentation, but we're going to go into a little bit more detail about it here and hear from these specific panelists. And Nanor, I do not have control. Oh, perfect. Thank you. So we are going to start off with Rachel. We're first going to focus on the academic portion of our experiences. So Rachel, I'll hand it over to you. If you can turn on your mic, introduce yourself and your school, and talk a little bit about that.
Hello, everybody. My name is Rachel Berkeley, and I am from North Central College. So I did both my bachelor's degree and also my master's here at North Central College, which is in Illinois, right outside of the Chicago area. In terms of my major, so when I was an undergrad, I did my Bachelor's of Arts in Elementary Education and Spanish. And so after I completed my bachelor's degree is when I completed a Fulbright in La Rioja, so in Logroño. And I loved it so much. I miss Spain all the time. And then after coming back from my year in Spain, I decided to pursue my master's. So I completed that this year, actually just in May, my master's in higher education leadership. And now I have come full circle, and now I currently work in the Center for Global Education here at North Central College. And so I work particularly with our outbound students. So a lot of times we send our either international or domestic students abroad to other places all across the world. But in our office, we also work with our incoming international students. And we have lots of activities and things that we do with those students and engage them and make them part of our campus community, which is super fun and super exciting. And I love working and meeting all of our international students. We do have our largest class of incoming international students coming in. So I'm just getting ready for that this summer, and we're very excited to welcome all of them to campus. And then the best place to study on campus is the Boiler House Cafe. So we call it BOHO for short here at North Central. But you can see it's actually in the picture right there, but we have, it's a coffee house. And so you can get coffee, and then they do have inside seating. And then it's so nice to sit out there in the spring, summer, early fall time, and you can sit and study and hang out with all of your friends, do homework, enjoy the nice weather, enjoy un café, and it's amazing. So I'm super excited to be here. So thank you so much for having me.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Rachel. We are going to keep going. Let me see if I've got control. Thank you, Nana, for switching the controls, but it looks like I can't move it. So if you could flip to the next slide, thank you. So now we will move on to Sarah. So Sarah is going to talk about her experience at Bowdoin College.
Hi, yeah, so my name is Sarah Walker. I went to Bowdoin College in Maine. It's a beautiful place, as you can see from the sunset, but we also get a lot of snow in the winter. So that was my freshman year. I majored in government and legal studies, so very similar to political science on many other college campuses. And then I minored in both earth and oceanographic science, so like geology, oceanography, and economics, and was a tutor for economics. I would say the best place to study on campus is the Visual Arts Center, because it's this very funky building next to the museum that's in this sunset picture, but there's a lot of natural light that comes in, so I really liked that. And that dog is a picture of my host family, and I don't know if many schools do it, but as international students, you should look out for ways that they can integrate you in the community. And one of the ways that Bowdoin does that for people like me from far away, from Seattle, or like international students, is matching you with a family in the local area to kind of be your family away from home.
That is awesome. We are going to talk about different living arrangements later in the presentation. So having a host family near your university or your college is definitely one of those options. With puppies is always a good idea. And I will also note before we move on to Isabel that if anybody has any questions for these panelists, feel free to put them in the chat, and we will have Q&A as well at the end of the panel. So now if we could go on to Isabel, and she's going to talk about her experience as a current student at Northwestern.
Should I speak in Spanish or English, or what works better? I don't know.
Let's keep going in English. How's that? And then if we have some questions later in Spanish, we'll switch to Spanish.
Sure. So my name is Isabel, and I am a second-year undergraduate student at Northwestern, which is a medium to small school in the Chicagoland region. I chose Northwestern because it was not, it was like very close to one of the major cities in the country. And that was important to me, especially because there's an international airport. And also because I was born in Madrid and I'm used to like big cities with lots of things to do. And I was already going to experience a cultural shock. I didn't want it to make it that big of a cultural shock. I also chose to come to the US because of liberal arts. I really had no idea what to study, and I felt like this was a very good way of just experimenting with different areas. Although I will have to say, and I will probably like develop in this a little later, I had no idea what liberal arts really meant, and I had a lot of trouble with that, especially my freshman year, which was last year. Um, Right now, I'm studying I'm majoring in environmental science with a minor in economics and a design certificate, which is not really a minor, which is a lot of fun. So clearly very different areas, which I would have never been able to mix in Europe. So I'm very happy I did that. And I'd say one of the best study spots at Northwestern is probably one of the beautiful libraries we have. There's many, you can see a picture there at the bottom left. There's like at least 2 or 3 libraries like that, and it's always beautiful to study there. You feel like the main character, and that's always great. Yeah.
That is awesome. Thank you. I will also note that having a liberal arts education is one of the big perks of studying in the United States. And as you can see from all of our panelists, they're able to study a variety of different things. So keep all of your interests in mind when you go to the US and you start your programs. I wanted to make a quick note about some of the academic resources that are on campus, and Nanor had mentioned them previously in the beginning of the presentation, but there is somebody on campus who can help you with anything that you need. So whether that is picking out your classes for next semester or just getting some advice about which programs that you're doing, you can always see an advisor. There are tons of tutors on campus, whether they are other students like yourself or your TA in your classes, your teaching assistant, or even professors. You can go to their office hours and receive help, maybe specifically for English language or for writing. There's also tutors that will help you if you need to do a presentation or a job interview or an interview for an internship. There is always somebody available to help you. And there are international students offices and even study abroad offices like Rachel, who would be able to help you if you plan on studying even outside of the US, if that's the case. And if we could go to the next one, Nanar, great. We're going to talk a little bit about extracurriculars. These are activities where you can become part of the university so that you are not just going to class, going to your dorm, going to class, going to your dorm. And it might be a little overwhelming at first when you are a freshman, maybe you don't know anybody at your university. It can be really hard to make friends or put yourself out there. But keep in mind that usually during orientation, you're going to meet different club leaders or different captains of sports, and you can get involved in many different activities. They will also have different events for freshmen specifically, where you can meet leaders of clubs and learn about what that club is all about, give them your email address, get in contact with them, and go to some different events to learn about these activities. You might even see a mascot like the photo in the top left. As Nanor mentioned, school spirit and school pride is very important on college campuses. So you might see someone walking around in one of these costumes at the events, and you can always take a cool photo with them with your friends. And we're going to go to the next slide where I think Rachel is going to talk a little bit about one of her extracurricular activities. And if you could let us know how you found out about this activity or how you joined.
So one of the activities that I did outside of the classroom was called Cardinal Dance Company. So Cardinals is our mascot at North Central for the Cardinals. So we called it Cardinal Dance Company, or CDC. And it was a dance show kind of extracurricular. So I had danced in high school. That was something that I loved to do. And so I learned about this opportunity at our student involvement fair, where all of the different kinds of extracurriculars and clubs and I mean, intramurals, all of those different kinds of things were kind of all in one place. And I started talking to one of the club leaders of Cardinal Dance Company and found that it was perfect. So you were able to sign up for as many dances as you wanted. So I did a ballet dance there. I did a jazz routine. I did a hip hop one. And you do different kinds of routines. And usually you meet for about an hour a week per dance. And so I would meet, it was about 3 hours of my time outside of my classroom. And so I would meet with whoever else signed up in my dance, and then we worked to practice these routines. And then at the end of the semester, we had a dance show on stage. And so this was a picture of us in the purple at the finale. So that was the final dance. And then we all come together, and it was just super fun. I met some of my closest friends in there, made lots of good relationships, and met a lot of people that way, and also got to do something that I love outside of the classroom that was not studying, and just I was excited to go to that. So that was one of the extracurriculars that I did.
That is perfect. And joining these different groups, you're going to also meet students who are not just in your year as freshmen, you're going to meet students from other years too, which is always fun. So now, Sarah, how did you find out about the CSU, the Catholic Students Union?
Yeah, thank you. And that was really fun to hear about Rachel's dance group. Catholic Students Union, I think I found, again, in the activities fair that they hold at the beginning of each semester. So in my freshman fall, I went to all the different booths and found them there. And that was something I was looking for, to have a community with something shared in common right away. And it really became kind of like I wrote there, friends, family, and faith. We would do bowling nights, as you can see. We celebrated the Easter holidays together, which was really nice for those of us who couldn't go home and see our families. After I came back from Spain, I had a little Spanish tapas night. So that's that photo up above. And we did some like prayer and tapas. So if at all, something like this would be meaningful for you, most colleges have a group for Christian, Catholic, Jewish, Hindu, Muslim, and it can be really a nice group to kind of just jump right into and have people to share something from home in common with.
Yes, for sure. And different faith groups are available on all different types of college and university campuses, not just religious campuses. So even if you go to a public state school, you can still find an organization like this or a local church that you can join if that is something that you want to do. And I'm just going to make a final note that volunteering is always an awesome way to get involved and make friends on campus. These are just some of the organizations that are really popular on college campuses. You might recognize some, like the American or the Red Cross generally. They will hold events on campus that you can volunteer for, or you can get involved with outreach off of campus as well. And we'll move on to the next, social life. So again, college is not just go to class, go to your dorm, go to your club. There's lots of different things that you can do on campus, and all of them can be outside of campus as well. It does not have to be directly with your college. So if we can move forward to the first, one of the best ways to make friends on your campus and sometimes off campus is where you live. So if you are a freshman, you might go directly to a residential dorm on campus, or even an apartment style housing unit that is on your campus, where it's super easy to make friends with your roommates or the people across the hall or upstairs or something. But if you are going to the US and you plan on doing a master's degree or different graduate studies, you might consider renting either an apartment or a house or something off of campus. And that is an option as well when you study in your undergrad years. However, it's usually a little more expensive, or maybe you will need a car or something like that. But there are options if you want to live off campus. The other two options I have listed here are Greek life. So this might be something that you've seen in movies, where there's a sorority or a fraternity for women and for men, where you live in a shared house with other people who are in your sorority or your fraternity. You will find out more information about joining those typically your freshman year. There's a whole process to it, and you can learn that on campus. As for the last option, the living and learning communities, these are available on some campuses where students from a particular major or maybe honors program or international students, like I've listed here, will live in the same dorm or the same building so that they can share time together. If, for example, they're all studying chemistry, all of the chemistry students live in one area so that later in the day after classes, they can all go home and still study together. It makes for a great community and for making friends. And it can also just be convenient if you need help with homework or something. And we'll move on to the last one. So just a note again that there are lots of things to do outside of your campus. So if you are living on campus, you're doing classes on campus and involved in groups on campus, do your best to get outside of campus and go study or go explore in the city that's near you, such as Chicago, like Rachel went to, for example. And there are different clubs and things on campus that can get you off campus. So maybe if you want to join a hiking group, if there are hiking options near you, or going to the beach, or different volunteer groups that will just take you away from campus so that you can go explore the US a little bit more. And we'll move forward again. Thank you, Nanar. Finally, we are going to get a little bit of advice from Isabel. So as we said, she is a current student in the US and she's from Spain. So she has some specific advice as a Spaniard in the United States. Isabel, what would you tell our audience here? What is the advice that you have?
Well, I mean, I think the first one and the main one for me was that I didn't want to be, like the Spanish kid whenever I was meeting American people. I didn't want to be like constantly talking about the differences between one country and the other and become like just that, very like one-dimensional. And I think people approach the fact that you're international in this country very different from how we would approach it in Spain. And people really want to know more about your country and they will ask you more, and people are really, really interested in the fact that you are from outside. So definitely don't be afraid of embracing the differences, of doing things differently, of speaking about what we are like and the things that we want to do. And of course you're going to have to adapt in many ways, but there's definitely not an expectation for you to become American or for you to like leave parts of your like cultural and national identity aside. That is not something that anyone is going to ask you to do. It took me a while to understand this one, to be honest, because it is difficult to balance both sides of your identity once you come here. Like, to what extent are you willing to become American, and to what extent is it useful to become more American, whatever that means, to start doing things in a more American way. So that's a big one. I would say that language was a big one for me because I went to a public school in Spain my whole life. So I learned Spanish in English class, basically. I know a lot of people that go to the US usually have been in international or British schools, so it's usually easier for them. But I feel like, especially at the beginning, using language to show your personality can be very, very hard. And you will find that your personality probably won't be the same in Spanish than in English, and you will have to figure that out with time, and it takes a lot of time. Don't expect, especially if you didn't go to one of these like international schools, don't expect to come to the US and within 2 months feel completely comfortable and feel like you are actually able to present yourself in a genuine way in English, because that takes probably years. That was also a very big one because I like Spanish. I mean, I'm a writer. So I used to use the language a lot to present myself the way I wanted to. And that was hard at the beginning. Also cultural references in general, like we grew up watching American media and listening to American songs, but there's still a lot that we don't know about. And there will be lots of actors and movies and songs that we've never heard of. So be patient with yourself and learning little by little. Also, you'll have like a bunch of international friends that are in very similar situations. So don't be afraid either. And even if you end up just having international friends, at least at the beginning, and you need like longer to get acquainted with Americans and their way of doing things, that's also completely fine. And the last one, and this was what I wanted to talk about related to liberal arts, is first that in these universities, there's usually an incredibly long list of resources for students, which I was not at all used to. At least at home in Spain and the way our universities work, we really are pretty alone in class, and you're expected to do all the work yourself, and you're not supposed to complain about anything also because nobody's gonna do anything about it even if you complain. Here it's always the opposite. Everybody's constantly trying to help you out. Professors want to help you out. So there's things like office hours, there's things like peer advisors, there's things like writing places where they help you out with essays. I didn't know that was a thing. Make sure you not only know about these things, but also use them and learn how to use them. The first time I went to office hours, I thought the professor was supposed to talk to me, and I just stood there alone looking at him quietly, and it was really weird, but it ended up okay. So I think that would be my main advice so far. Oh yeah, and liberal arts in general at the beginning, also because these are usually private schools, so you're paying for this. I felt like I needed to feed as many majors and as many classes and as much of everything as possible. And I needed to finish everything as fast as possible. And that's not really how liberal arts work. They're giving you that much space precisely for you to just explore and go abroad and have volunteering programs. And you don't need to do 5 majors in 4 years with 3 minors. That's not, like, people will graduate with 1 major having done a bunch of volunteering things and study abroad programs, and that's completely fine as well. Well, as long as you're exploring and doing whatever you feel that is fulfilling to you. And if that is the reason why you're coming to the US, make sure you use it and you don't come with the European mentality of just fitting as much as possible and getting all the technical classes done in your freshman year.
Yes, thank you. I will applaud that. I think that the liberal arts education that we were talking about is super important. And you are able to do things like 2 majors or 3 majors if you want to, but by no means do you have to do that. 1 major is more than enough. I will also second your advice about making sure you use the resources that are available to you. Remember that you're paying for this education. This is what you are paying for. So you can use these things, these tutors, these office hours to your advantage to make your experience better. Okay, and we have some advice that's written here on the screen. While Rachel and Sarah and Isabel briefly, in like 10 seconds, go over this. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat and we're gonna go over them in just a minute or 2. So Rachel, if you would like to summarize your bit here, that would be great.
Sure. So my biggest advice would be to be comfortable being uncomfortable. So put yourself out there, join that club, go to that social event, try to live on one of those kind of social or like international living communities. Be a part of the campus and be comfortable being uncomfortable, because that's how you grow.
Yes, that's fantastic. And Sarah, if you can go ahead and summarize your bit.
Yeah, I think Isabel covered it a little bit, but just to reiterate that these transitions can be really hard, and this is from my experience living in Spain twice, but you have to adapt to the new culture, but then also language, and whatever the new experience is too. So it's like you're going to university or a grad program, and then you have these other changes. So just be kind to yourself and take extra naps or rest if you need it, and do everything like Rachel said, go to those things. But if there's a day when you just can't go to something, like that's okay too, and everyone takes a rest day.
Yes, absolutely. This is all perfect advice. It's advice that I received and Sarah and Rachel received. We all moved to Spain and we've received advice like this because it is really hard. And Isabel, if you'd like to add on to your advice, I know you just talked a lot about advice, but if you've had any other thoughts, please share them.
Yeah, sure. I think a big one for me was to change too much and become someone that I wasn't, and then coming back, and for the rest of, like, you will have a cousin that was born in a different country, and whenever he comes, it's like, oh, he's Spanish, but not completely. But you know, that's your life path, and if that's what it takes for you to like feel comfortable, don't be afraid. You can also just always have, and this is complicated, and for everyone it is different, but some people will have like 2 a country and another, and some other people will just become more American with like a touch of Spanish culture, and that's also okay. if your sense of humor changes, if your cultural references change, if the way you speak changes. It might happen. Don't be afraid of it. It's part of the adaptation. And yeah, it will be hard, but it's fun as well.
Yes, it will be hard, but it's growth and it's important. So that was a very good note to end on. We do have a few questions that we put in the chat, so I'm just going to go over those. Let's see. We have a question about making friends after doing their freshman year online from home and now potentially going to college and starting off as a sophomore. Does anyone have any advice for making friends other than maybe joining clubs that we talked about before?
Yes, I have a big one here. And I think it's reaching out. Everybody's on the same place. Everybody wants to make new friends. Everybody started a new phase and then had to go home for months. So everybody has like these friend crushes that they just reach out to on Instagram or even just directly a text. It is not weird. Social customs have changed. And people will generally be excited to just get a cup of coffee with you and talk for an hour and make friends like that. And then they will invite you to a party or social event organization, and that's how you start to make connections. But if there's someone you want to become friends with or that you're interested in, just as friends, don't be afraid to reach out on Instagram or by text because people don't see it weird anymore if they did before, and they will be excited about it.
Yes, I will also add that you are not going to be the only one that's new on campus, even though it's your second year. I promise there will still be other students who are transferring into the university as a second or even as a third year student. So you will not be alone in this. For the sake of time, I'm going to keep moving. There is a question, is it hard to join extracurricular activities? Meaning, do you have to pass tryouts? I think that's going to depend on the club or the extracurricular activity that you're looking to join. In some cases, you may have to do a tryout, but they will tell you that ahead of time so that you can prepare. But there are many extracurricular activities that anybody can join in, and those are always a good idea. As for the questions regarding athletics, I'm going to ask Nanor if she could answer those. Somebody has asked if, as international students, you can join athletics on your college campus. And that also is dependent on the college or the sport. So Nanor, if you want to take over on that one.
Sure, yeah. So there is going to be organized collegiate sports at many universities through NCAA or NAIA, and they tend to be quite competitive. And honestly, many teams build their teams in advance before the school year even starts and know what players are going to be on there. So to walk on is possible. It's just more complicated and not the norm, I would say. In terms of, but along with that, I want to make clear that there are a ton of opportunities to still play sports on campus. I don't know if any of our panelists played any sports. Yeah, Sarah, you want to tell us what you played and how you got involved?
Yeah, I played Ultimate Frisbee for about 2.5 years before I was injured. And yeah, it was great. There's kind of, yeah, as you're saying, the NCAA level, depending on your school, that will be like Division 1, 2, or 3, and then club, and then intramural. And so I played club Ultimate Frisbee. In the fall, it's really great because most universities, the way it works for men and women is that it's kind of like a get to know you season. They have practices outside, anyone can join, and they teach you how to play if you haven't played before, which is really fun. And then in the spring, it becomes more competitive. And so at that point, they might like have a tryout or something if that interests you. And then if not, obviously you're still part of the team. And so I really liked that kind of level of like, it wasn't the same thing as like having to go every day like Division 1 athletes do, but it also was kind of like a full commitment. Yeah.
Awesome. And is it possible to be part of the coaching staff or assistants in the sports team at the university? I'd say it's kind of complicated, but probably on the intramural sports, there's opportunity for that, especially if you're more, you've been practicing the sport for a very, very long time and you're really advanced. So I don't know if anyone wants to comment on that as well.
I did not play sports on my university campus, so I can't relate. but I will add a comment about one of these questions regarding subjects and credits. Is it normal to have more subjects or credits than usual in the United States? Here in Spain, I have more courses, maybe 7 or 8, and in the United States, more like 4 or 5. It is dependent on your university and how they set up their class structure and each semester or even trimester. However, in most cases, it is possible to have more than the normal amount of courses. I will ask if any of the panelists, if you've taken a semester where you took more courses than normal. Rachel, yes. So before I ask Rachel to add on to that, my advice is to do like a normal semester when you go to the United States. Only take the normal amount of courses because you're going to be adjusting to so much. But then if you feel like you can take more on, maybe that's something to ask your advisor. But Rachel, what was your experience doing that?
So our minimum here is 12 credits as a minimum in order to be considered full-time, and then 18 is considered a full maxed out load of courses. And so it can vary depending on what the number of credits each course is, depending. So if you take a lot of 2 credit classes, or if you take a couple of 4 and a 5 credit even, but just be careful with that because some institutions do charge an additional overload fee if you go over that 18. So because I was trying to fit so much in and do so many different things, I ended up paying an overload fee for one semester because I took 19 credits instead of the 18. So I had to pay an additional fee for that one extra credit. And it was a busy semester.
Yes. So again, my advice is talk to your advisor to make sure that number one, you're taking enough credits to still be considered a full-time student, but also that you're taking a course load that is appropriate for you or for your major. It can be very easy to overload yourself with work, especially if you are transitioning to a new country, to a new living space. Go easy on yourself, at least at first.
I would say quickly also that definitely do that first semester or first year where you like take the normal load, because in addition to all those changes, the first couple weeks of every semester are a little bit lighter in my experience. And so like the first couple weeks of a couple semesters, I was like, oh, maybe I'll take 5 classes. Like they all sound really cool. But then the work picks up and you're like, oh no, that was a really good idea that I dropped that other one. So some people do it and it works really well for them, but just kind of know yourself and kind of gauge like, okay, how are the first couple weeks versus like the later weeks?
Yes, that is a good point. Typically, the first week or so of each class is syllabus week, and it's pretty easy. You get to know the professor, you get to know how the class is structured, but then the work is going to pick up very, very quickly. So be careful. And I'm going to go on to the next one. So can you talk a little bit about house renting advice, things that we should be careful with, and contracts? Maybe Nanor, I'm not sure if you've got any advice about this. I did not have any experience in renting in the United States. So
did any of the panelists, I can also chime in, but if anyone, did everyone live on campus their time? Yes, Rachel, no? Everyone, okay. I'll take this one, no problem.
Okay,
so if you would like to rent a house, find a group of people and do that, you totally can. So a good place to start is, again, International Student Services. A lot of times there are like posters up of like looking for a roommate or this and that. So that's another way. Is Craigslist still a thing in the US? I don't know. Where do people find roommates and stuff it's been a long time since I've been there. But there's sites online where you can find if there's a room available, things like that. So there's a lot of different channels to find a house to rent, okay? In terms of other advice is, just make sure you understand very clearly what you're signing and what you're getting into. Okay, understanding how much they're charging for this, deposits or that, whatever it may be. So just read everything carefully, make sure you understand it properly. And also, again, your university will be a great resource for you as well. You know, they might have matching services, or they might have ways, certain companies that they work with, or apartments that a lot of their students will use that are close to campus and things like that. So there's a lot of resources out there. Start with your university, and I'm sure a lot will also come up as you're there.
I would advise, if you have not already, join a Facebook page that your university has made. Typically, there is a Facebook page for the class of 2020, I don't know, from Northwestern University. You can join that page, and students will often post if there's a room available, or if they're looking for roommates, or even if they're selling textbooks for a certain class. It's a really, really helpful resource. And instead of using Craigslist, maybe that would be more effective for finding housing that's close to campus for students. The other questions here is the activities fair held before or after the academic year starts? Typically, there will be some sort of a freshman year orientation event. And during those events before the academic year starts, you'll find activities in different clubs there. But even after classes start, there might be activities on campus where you can learn about, or different events on campus where you can learn about different activities. So I would keep an eye open before the academic year starts and even just after as well. And regarding joining extracurriculars, even in the spring semester, at least on my college campus, in my experience, there were events in the beginning of the spring semester if we wanted to join different clubs. And I see Rachel and Sarah nodding, so I'm assuming it was the same on their campus as well. Okay, and do we have any other questions that we'd like?
Do you guys want to just say what other clubs you guys got involved with? I know you talked a bit about dance and things like that, but just maybe clubs or organization, just to give people an idea of what else is out there.
Yeah, maybe let's start with Rachel. What else did you join in?
So I was also part of International Club, which was a way to meet international students on campus, but it was also open to domestic students as well. So I participated in that, and there was lots of events for, we would eat different kinds of food from different cultures, and we would get together. We have a retreat every year where we go to a lake house or a different kind of cabin, and we all stay together and spend one night there, and super fun activity. So that was another one that I also participated in.
Super cool. And Sarah, how about you?
Okay, so in addition to CSU and Frisbee, I was an econ tutor, and then I did some volunteering, helping in different elementary schools or low-income housing one year, and then there was always another thing through the one of the elementary schools had a father-daughter dance, so that was one of my favorite events to volunteer with every year.
That sounds like so much fun. And it's a nice way, again, to get involved in the community off campus as well. And Isabel, what have you done at Northwestern? What have you been involved in?
Right now, I work at the student government, and I'm also in a community garden. I've done some volunteering in elementary schools as well in the area. And for a bit, I was also in a triathlon club. There's a lot going on. An arts club as well, as writing magazine. Yeah.
All right. It sounds like you're super involved. That's wonderful. Isabel brings up a good point that sometimes there are opportunities to work on campus as well. Like I said, I was not involved in sports, but I did work on campus at my writing center. So I was one of the tutors that would help other students on campus who were working on different papers or essays or things that they needed to write. If you're looking to make some money on campus, I believe with your student visa, maybe Nanor, you can answer this question. I think you are able to work up to a certain number of hours. So there are opportunities for you to join the campus work culture.
Yep, you can usually work up to 20 hours a week on campus. So find those jobs if that's interesting to you, definitely. Okay, I think we're going to end here. We've already gone over time, but this has been so great and so informative. So thank you all for joining and taking the time to do this. We really, really appreciate it. I think we'll end here. So thanks everyone who's tuned in for this pre-departure orientation. We wish you all the best for your next year in the US. Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Good luck, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, good luck.